Hey, I'm Paeter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is the tail end, as I record this live on and streaming on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel. This is the tail end of what I've been calling my, Solo Tabletop Game Fest. Solo Tabletop Game Fest 2021. Sounds about right. And I played a number of games over the course of 4 days, for a total of nearly 15 hours, maybe, of playing. Some of my favorite soloable, I should say, tabletop games. I almost said board games, but some of these are card games too. And I thought that maybe after I was done, I would just kind of stream and also record myself thinking through what would currently be my top 5 solo games that I enjoy. Now, for my tastes, I really prefer a particular type of solo game. I've got other types of solo games in my collection. Merchant of Venus. What do we got? Forbidden Island can be soloable, and Merchant of Venus isn't made to be solo, but it has a variant you can use. Galaxy Defenders can be solo. Return of the Heroes. But the games that I tend to enjoy most are campaign-based, so they have character progression over multiple game sessions, and they are usually dungeon crawls or have the elements of dungeon crawls that involve exploration and defeating enemies and gaining loot as a part of that whole process. And then as a result of fighting enemies and gaining loot, becoming stronger, so all that. So that discovery, combat, and character growth is really the type of thing that I want to experience in most tabletop games. And then in particular, solo games. If I'm just playing by myself, I get to just have my druthers, whatever those are, then that's the kind of game I'm going to play. And so what I have put together on my table here, just to look at and talk about, are what I would say are the contenders right now, and I'm going to try and figure out what order I would put them in. So we've got HeroQuest. This is the classic Milton Bradley game that many of you guys are already familiar with. Let me make sure all these are in frame. We got, let's see, actually, let me just move this over just a wee bit that way. That's better. That's better. Okay. So we've got HeroQuest, Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls, which I did not play during the event this week. It was just going to be a little bit too complex for me to reacquaint myself with. I hadn't played it for about a year or more. And that's the nature of a lot of games that I enjoy, is that they're rich and they got a lot going on in them because they're trying to create this fantasy world, this fantasy environment for you. Trying to create in many ways that role-playing game experience. That's something that I also really like in my tabletop board and card games. I typically am not going to... I did explore before doing this week the idea of trying to solo Dungeons and Dragons or some other fantasy tabletop RPG. And all the options were just more work and effort than I wanted to have. I wanted something that was going to be easier to solo, and so while I do love paper and pencil RPGs, whether it's as a solo player or more often when I play, with a group as it's meant to be played, there's the investment, especially if you're running the game yourself. The investment in time and prep and all that kind of stuff is just more than I want to put in at this stage in my life. So let's see here. Mage Knight. This is one that I played this week. This was kind of like the beefy one. I was either like, I'll either reacquaint myself with Mage Knight as best I can in a short period of time, or with Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls. I chose Mage Knight. I think that was probably the right choice. Pathfinder, the adventure card game. This week I actually played the Mummy's Mask base set, but I've played all the way through Rise of the Rune Lords, and I also own the Wrath of the Righteous, and had just barely started playing that with a friend. One Deck Dungeon was another one that I tried to play at the very end this week, but because of some stuff that came up in life that derailed my schedule, my plans, I was just really too distracted to give it the attention that it deserves. But it's one that I do recommend that you check out. Nice little portable, soloable dungeon crawl, either play solo or cooperatively. And then early on this week, I played Doom, the board game, not the 2016 game, but the 2004 game, which is actually based on Doom, the video game Doom 3. And both, let's see, HeroQuest and Doom are not intended to be solo or even cooperative. They're intended to have an enemy player. And so playing them solo was an interesting experience, but one that I did enjoy in both cases. For me, and I talked about this when I played through them, and you can go back and watch the videos once I get those posted. But one of the things that I had to let go of was the desire for all the surprise that I would normally have, because the enemy player is going to be revealing rooms, revealing the map as you go on, and you're just not going to be able to have that experience unless you radically alter the game, as some variants do, and try to give you rules to randomly generate a dungeon. And I just don't want, by that time it ends up being so far removed from the original experience that it's not what I want to play. But I also don't play any games, really, video games, tabletop games. I don't play them for challenge. I don't play them to take on a challenge and prove to myself or anyone else that I can beat this challenge. That is not at all what I play games for. In fact, as soon as a game gets too challenging, it gets in the way of what I do play games for, and that's to experience the theme. It's basically, I want a more fleshed out version of playing with action figures. And that's what I like board games for and video games for, is they flesh out a world for me. Yes, there are rules in there, and there is some pushback, and I do like some pushback in difficulty, but just enough to give me a sense of resistance, just enough to give me a little sense of drama. But by and large, I really want my heroes to be effective and to explore and to become more powerful and to defeat those that would come up against them, you know. I find that I'm not sacrificing that much by playing the enemy player. And I've played the enemy player in HeroQuest, Doom, First Edition, Descent for so many years that it's really kind of hardwired into me. So even when I was soloing and going back and forth in HeroQuest and Doom between the hero players, or the Marines in the case of Doom, and the enemy player, I was not going easy on the heroes, because I think it's just, for like decades, I can honestly say, decades, I have been largely playing that role, first in HeroQuest, and then later in Doom, and then in Descent. I play that far more often than I play as heroes. And so I found it easy to get back into that role, to be in that role, and to make it challenging and interesting as I'm able for the heroes. So, and I added a ton of variant rules that I've been dabbling with over the last, 7 years, on and off, with big gaps in between. But HeroQuest, if you watch my playthrough of it, is radically different in terms of its content, in terms of a number of its rules from the base game. I was really enjoying what I was doing. I question whether or not I would enjoy that near as much if I were just playing by myself, because there is something different about making content for other people to watch. And that means that now I'm thinking out loud, and there's just there's a little bit of an energy that comes along with it, that naturally comes into the game, comes into my portrayal of the different thematic elements like monsters and stuff like that. And so I inject an energy into the experience that I wouldn't if I was just playing by myself and silently, sometimes almost motionlessly, staring at the board and thinking about my choices and stuff. And so I think that that the experience for me playing HeroQuest with my rules variants is probably much better when I'm making content, recording or streaming it, than it would be if I was all by myself playing. I think the same is probably true of Doom. And for that reason, neither of those games is going to be at the top of my top 5 list. I don't even have room for all of these here. One of them is going to have to be dropped off. But I know they wouldn't be at the top of my list. I also know that One Deck Dungeon wouldn't be at the top of my list. That's a really neat game to have, but it's not going to be a go-to for me, because it's good when you don't have other options. It's great to have on the go, to take with me on vacation. It's a bit abstract. What's clever about this game is how much they can fit on a single card. It really is literally one deck, and there's so much that you can do with that. The cards, depending on what part of the card you're looking at, can serve a different function. They can be loot, they can be experience points, they can be new abilities, they can be an enemy, they can be a trap. And so it's the design of it is really clever and wonderful for taking on the go. But the gameplay itself is fairly abstract. I mean, as I was starting to play through it a little bit on the stream, I was trying to bring out the theme as I played through it by pointing out that, let's see here, when you're going up against a trap, like a trap here, you can conjure a magic shield to stop it if you have enough magic ability. But really, you're just rolling the blue dice and see if you can manufacture a total of 6 points out of that. So the game doesn't do a lot mechanically to help me feel the theme. It's just, but it is impressive how far they do take it, given the limitations that they're confining themselves to in the design of the game. And so, yeah, so One Deck Dungeon, I really am glad to. I like it enough that I bought the expansion for it, but that's also not going to be near the top of my list. I think these three here are going to be above those others, and these three being, if you're listening to just an audio version of this, Sword and Sorcery, Immortal Souls, Mage Knight, the board game, and Pathfinder, the adventure card game. Now, Sword and Sorcery is it's got a lot going on in it, and that is part of what makes it really cool. There's so much loot and treasure you can find. The enemy AI, I've never seen anything like. I mean, the closest thing would be Galaxy Defenders, which this game uses the same skeleton of the rules for Galaxy Defenders. It's the same skeleton there. And hang on, let me just 1 second. Let me make sure that everything's okay over here. Yeah, okay. I got this weird thought in my head that I forgot to hit record, I wasn't actually streaming or something like that. Anyway, oh, I gotta go fast. I don't have much more time left here. But the complexity that makes the AI of the monsters so interesting also means that things get bogged down as you as a player, especially a solo player, controlling the minimum of 2 heroes that you need to control to play through that game. You're thinking about each of your heroes and all the equipment they have, all the options they have, all the spells and cooldowns and stuff like that. And then you're also thinking about the AI and like, okay, well, what is the situation on the board? And I got to factor in all the things that are going on the board because that'll determine which of the AI paths I follow. And there are multiple branching paths, kind of the AI for the monsters. You have to kind of figure out which one applies. Instead of, what would be simpler, although admittedly less strategic in some ways, if it's just like, okay, every monster gets a turn, they're going to move toward the nearest hero and attack them. Or they're going to move toward the weakest hero and attack them. I find it more enjoyable for me to, while I was streaming this week, to just get into the headspace of the enemy player and not let an AI determine and have to follow this clunky AI and be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I would rather play Sword and Sorcery and just have stats for the monsters and just choose each round what they're going to do. I would get through turns in that game so much faster that way, and I would still provide enough of the challenge that I want. Admittedly, again, I don't play games for challenge, but I would provide enough of that pushback that I want, and it would keep the game significantly from being bogged down. So now, as I'm actually saying this, maybe HeroQuest. No. Here's the thing with HeroQuest. Love that game, but I have played it so much that even adding all that I have to it, I would rather play through a fantasy dungeon crawl board game that I haven't played entirely through yet. And I haven't played all the way through Sword and Sorcery's well, I played through the base campaign, but I've just started the first expansion for that game, and there's a bunch more that came out that I haven't gotten through. That said, it's pricey for what you get. I think you only get 5 or 6 quests in the base campaign, in the base box, whereas HeroQuest back in the day, you got 10, 12 quests, something like that. Doom the board game, maybe a similar number of quests, not a ton, but yeah, I think that Doom the board game, not again, with both HeroQuest and Doom, you have to be willing to let go of some things, let go of some challenge, and have a different expectation of what that experience is going to be. With HeroQuest, I gain back a lot of the surprise that I lose from having the map in front of me, from the rules that I've added about random monster generation and all the stats for monsters from other games that I've brought in and balanced to work in my HeroQuest game. Let's see here. Doom, I've played just sparingly enough. I haven't played all the way through Doom, the board game. And so that's enough of a novelty to me that I think that is still interesting to me. Well, I don't know. Let's come back to that in a second here. I think at the top, let's take HeroQuest out of the running. Because even what I would want to play as a solo version of HeroQuest involves all of my house rules. Okay, so let's just take that out of the running. I'm not really talking about HeroQuest at that point, if I include it on the list here as a solo game, in the sense that I mean. But I will try to remember to put a link below. There is, if you're watching this during the live stream, there is a link below to all of my house rules that I was using this week to play it. You can check them out yourself. They're very much a work in progress. They're not something that I'm looking to workshop with people on Boardgame Geek and stuff like that. I just put them there so that you could obtain them if you wanted to get some inspiration yourself for maybe what you could do as you play HeroQuest, since that reprint is coming out in the fall of 2021 and the rules are virtually unchanged. So all the stuff that I came up with to alter my game should be applicable to that version as well. But let's take that out of the running. I think probably coming in at number 5, I'm going to say One Deck Dungeon. Yeah, definitely an enjoyable experience, but only when I don't have these other options to choose from. So that's my number 5. Coming in at number 4, it's going to be either Doom or Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls. Gosh. Well, which one am I most likely to play? Away from the camera, not making content just for me. I think that I am more likely, at least at this point, right now, but, I'm comparing apples to oranges because I haven't played Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls for like over a year. And so I might be viewing it through rose-tinted lenses, but there's no objectivity when you look for lists like this unless you're just looking at sales charts. But that doesn't tell you anything more than what they sold. I will next put Doom the board game. I think that it works really well for streaming. It's simple enough for me. It's probably a game that I'll play maybe in the future on live streams because it's very simple. It's easy for me to make choices for both the Marines and the invaders, the aliens and stuff, the demons, whatever the crap. It's not really brain burny. It's a very kind of soda and popcorn, soda and, well, I was going to say soda and potato chips, but let's not eat potato chips while we handle our cards, okay? Yeah, so that one would come next. It doesn't quite have the richness and the depth that I would want, but in the right situation, such as streaming, or maybe some social lubricant, or that I think could be a really good. Well, I just said social when I'm talking about a solo game, strictly as a solo game, and playing not really with special variant rules you'd have to find, but just being a player who's willing to remove the cards that have to do with interrupting each other. Like, my Marines don't play with the guard order that allows them to interrupt the other guys. And the invader, I took out most of the cards that have to do with doing things during the player's turns. So I could just focus when I'm the players, the Marines, being a Marine, and when I'm the invader player, be the invader. So I did have to alter the game just by removing some things. And I realize this game is out of print, and so this might be irrelevant for me to be talking about this, but I wanted to still bring it into the discussion because I think that it's of a type of game that my thoughts on it and how you can solo it and how that can be an enjoyable experience are still applicable to many other games of the same type. So yeah, I'll put that at number 4. Then at number 3, I will put Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls. It's a beefy game. And I think the trick for me to enjoy that one is to keep it set up on one of these flat big pieces of cardboard that I have from an old TV box or something, and then slide it under a bed so I don't have to do setup and teardown every time I want to play it. So that if I want to play it and I just want to scratch that itch for a few turns one night and then pick it up again a month later, it won't be taking up table space and I won't have to go through all the crap of setup and teardown. Because that's half of the battle with a game like that. And I think removing that barrier, I will be able to play it more often and be bogged down by the rules less and unfamiliarity with the rules. I think it does become... I remember last time I played it for a good stretch and I was starting to get more familiar with the rules. Now, that said, I was still messing them up. I was still breaking them. I wouldn't want to play Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls with another person because I think they would find it to be a frustrating experience. For me, when I'm just by myself and I mess up a rule or I start to get impatient, I'm like, I don't want to look this rule up. I just make a call and I move forward, you know. Oh, I've been forgetting to do this and my characters should have been at a much greater disadvantage. Oh, well, you know, and I just move on. So I think Sword and Sorcery, for my taste, is best experienced as a solo game. Would not want to play it with other players. But when I want something that's crunchy and it has a lot going on, and I want the rewards from all that, Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls is probably a good number 3 on my list of solo tabletop games. Now here's the real tough one, and I gotta leave soon to go pick up my son. I'm already gonna be late. That's fine. If I'm late enough times picking him up, he gets ice cream. We all get ice cream, so maybe we'll just get ice cream. Mage Knight and Pathfinder, the adventure card game. This is tough because playing Mage Knight this week, wow, I remembered how much I could enjoy that game. Coming off of this week, the game I want to play most by myself now is Mage Knight. However, it is a beefy game. It is a particular kind of experience that I'm not always going to be in the mood for, especially at the end of a lot of my work days when my work involves a lot of deep thinking, a lot of silent processing, and just considering of a lot of things, you know. And so many times at the end of a work day, I'm like, I don't want to burn my brain. I want to chuck some dice, you know, if I even feel like playing a board game. And Pathfinder, the adventure card game, has enough random elements. It is about dice chucking enough. Yes, it's about really thinking tactically about, okay, here's my hand. I mean, both of these games are similar in that way. You have this hand of cards. You're like, okay, how can I use the cards at my disposal to accomplish the task in front of me, you know? And so I think in that regard, they do work a similar part of the brain. But Pathfinder is going to be more loosey-goosey, more reckless, more based on the dice than Mage Knight is, certainly. That's not to say that it's this game that's entirely about luck. There's a lot of careful thought that it'd be to your benefit to employ while you're playing that game. But I think more often I'm going to find myself wanting to play a few rounds of Pathfinder adventure card game and then going back to playing video games for the rest of the night. You know, just do a few rounds here and there. Da-da-da-da. And yet, I mean, I played all through Rise of the Rune Lords. I have played, how many games how many games of Mummy's Mask have I played? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me see if I can actually figure that out for a second here. Oh, I can't tell from looking. I can't remember how many scenarios are in each of these. Let's say I've played about 12 games of Pathfinder adventure card games solo. How many games of Mage Knight have I played? Have I played that many? I haven't, but they've probably each been twice as long. So I've probably spent about as much time playing Mage Knight as I have Pathfinder at this point. Although it's Mage Knight, I have played a lot less before just this last week. My gosh, this is really hard. This is really hard to choose between these two. This is one of those things, you know, sometimes when I make a list like this, it just feels it just feels unfair. Because I feel like a week from now I'll give you a different answer, and I probably will. Let me answer a question here though in the chat really quick. Nidaloth, thanks for coming out. He asks, or she asks, do you play PACG with permanent death? Pathfinder adventure card game they're referring to. No freaking way. No. I don't even think if I played it with a group of people would I play it that way. I think we would just all agree as a household. No, you're just going to reconstitute your deck using the cards that you would be allowed to rebuild them with, and then take the rewards from all the quests that you would have gotten. I mean, I've run into that scenario before, and I have chosen to rebuild my character. But I just give them the rewards for rather than play. What they say on the website or whatever is like, play through all the quests again to catch up with where your group is. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? No way am I going to do that. So, no, absolutely not. So getting back to ranking these two, I'm going to go with Mage Knight as my number one. I highly suspect that a month from now, it will not be my number one anymore. Maybe. We'll see. I just don't know. But I know that the heights of enjoyment I have experienced in both Mage Knight and Pathfinder adventure card game, when I compare the two, I have enjoyed the heights of Mage Knight more than Pathfinder. It's not. It's a little bit of the odd man out in this group because it's not technically a dungeon crawl, but it has enough of those elements. You could maybe even almost put a dungeon crawl skin over it somehow. And I mean, they do have locations you can go to where thematically you are going through a dungeon and fighting monsters or whatever. But I think that the game usually takes so long to play that I'm going to leave it set up on poster board or some kind of stiff, light surface that I can slide under a bed or whatever. So it is going to amount to multiple sessions, and so it'll have enough of that campaign vibe, even just in a single game, because I'll play like maybe I'll do, one or two turns, or maybe one full round, one cycle of day or one cycle of night, and then I'll put it down for, a week or more and come back to it. And there is a campaign system online that I would like to play with. I didn't have time to familiarize myself with it enough. It's a user-created thing, but it looks kind of cool. And so, yeah, I really do think that Mage Knight is going to be my number one. And you can watch tons of reviews. I'm trying to remember if I've made a video about Mage Knight or not. If I have, then I will put some notification about it on the screen when I upload this as a video and put a link to it below so that you can find it easily. I might have made some kind of video on Mage Knight. I can't remember. But really, that is certainly the game that I enjoyed most this week. First game I played this week, and the game that I most look forward to getting back to. That said, I really enjoy all of these games. So finally, in summary, number 5, I would say One Deck Dungeon. HeroQuest I'm taking off the list just because of all the things I really enjoyed about it in solo mode were heavily dependent upon my variant rules that I've been messing around with. So One Deck Dungeon, number 5. Doom, number 4, really good in the right setting. I think I would probably enjoy streaming more of that game in the future. Number 3, Sword and Sorcery Immortal Souls. Great game if you want specifically what it offers and you're willing to put in the effort required to extract the enjoyment out of the complexity and all the moving parts going on in that game. That's my number 3. Number 2, Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. It's probably the game that I will play more of in the long run than I do of Mage Knight. I've bought a number of the base sets, really enjoy it. It's probably the game I will play more often on average than Mage Knight, but oh my gosh, I just cannot deny that the heights of enjoyment in Mage Knight, how different each game can play out, the different challenges and scenarios, that feeling that you get from puzzling through and realizing, oh, I figured out a way to do this more economically than I originally thought I could. So that's the one exception. I don't play games for challenge, but I do like some of the challenge that's provided in the puzzles of that game. You can also modify the difficulty all you want. It's even built into the rules themselves. They offer difficulty levels, basically. No one should be intimidated by this game. Maybe people will tell you, oh my gosh, it's just for really brainy people and it's really crunchy and it's got all these rules and mechanics going on. if anything, when I live streamed it this week, I wanted to put the message out there: do not be intimidated by Mage Knight, especially if you're going to play it solo. It's your toy box. It's your toy box. You do what you want with it. And it's the same with all of these games. When you're playing a game solo, don't let anyone tell you, well, you got to do this way, or you're cheating, or you're doing this wrong, What they don't understand, what those people don't understand who are insisting that you should play your game a certain way, is that at the end of the day, we're just enjoying our toys, and we each like to play with them in different ways. And so anyway, I hope maybe there's something here in this collection of games that has opened up the possibilities of a game, or reminded you about a game that you have enjoyed playing solo, that you might enjoy playing solo if you gave it a try. But that's all I have for now. That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in for any part of this live stream that you may have. Let's see here. We got one question here from Jewbanger. Ever play the Arkham horror games? I recall you like Lovecraft lore. I have bought and sold twice the second edition of Arkham Horror put out by Fantasy Flight Games, and really do enjoy the theming. Ultimately, the gameplay was beaten out by the other games in my collection, and I just realized I'm not going to go back to this one. I am curious about the living card game, but from what I understand, that's just a big investment. So anyway, I am all done, and thanks for coming out, guys, and I'll see you another time. Thanks. Bye-bye. Once again this year, I'm raising funds for children in urgent need, this time fundraising for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which provides free treatment for children facing life or death circumstances, and shares its cutting-edge life-saving research with hospitals all over the world. To raise funds, I'm leading members of the Christian Geek Central community in our Game Save 21 event, which you're still welcome to join by following the link in the description below. And once again this year, I'm drawing attention to our team's fundraising by performing a 24-hour marathon of video gaming that I will stream live on youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral beginning 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Saturday, November 6th. You can donate or get more info by clicking on my fundraising page in the links below, where you'll also find incentives and rewards for doing so. For donating $5 or more, you can choose a topic for me to share my sometimes overly strong opinions on during my live stream. For $10 or more, you get the previous reward and a download code for a free copy of the Spirit Blade Special Edition audio drama. For $20 or more, you get the previous rewards, and you can choose a game for me to play during my November 6th live stream. Pick a favorite or torture me with something terrible or rage-inducingly difficult. At $30, you get the previous rewards, and you can choose a song for me to sing during my November 6th live stream. Pick an old favorite of yours, or just make me humiliate and torture myself with something no one wants to hear. And at $50 or more, you get the previous rewards and a download code for every MP3 product at SpiritBlade.com. That's an $80 value. On top of that, I've set some fundraising milestones that will unlock strange and unusual happenings as I reach them. At $200, I'll have a free download day for everyone who visits SpiritBlade.com on November 13th. And as my total goes beyond $200, I'll unlock increasingly more content for that free download day. And depending how far beyond $200 my fundraising goes, during my November 6th live stream, I will show a photo of me you will never be able to unsee, put on a pair of frozen socks and a frozen t-shirt at the same time, shoot water up my nose with a turkey baster, and have my wife Holly play a video game with me for 30 minutes. And if I reach a personal fundraising total of $500 or more, I will do a 2-hour jump scare live stream before the end of the year featuring only the games that terrify me most, including Dead Space and PT. Now, I don't want to do that, but I know you sick people want to see that, so you're going to have to pay money to make it happen. And if I reach my $500 goal by the end of Thursday, October 21st, I will do a 4-hour live stream on Monday night, October 25th, doing my pathetically absolute best to get good at a game in the Souls genre. Now, there are some stipulations and time limits on those rewards and milestones, so quickly follow the link below to my fundraising page for all the details. I hope that you will be a part of helping me and the Christian Geek Central Game Save team do some good for some kids and families who really need it. And then please join me at youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral for my 24-hour video gaming marathon starting at 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Saturday, November 6th. Hope to see you then. Oh my gosh. This is all kinds of wrong.